On day two of the Senior Bowl, I wanted to talk about the NFL draft prospects that the Bears could take during the second and third rounds of the draft, also known as day two. The second day of practices have wrapped up, and I want to talk briefly about a couple of players that stood out today and identify the names I believe Ryan Poles is targeting for the NFL draft. Let's get right into it. First off, it was great to see Ian Cunningham back roaming the sidelines of the Senior Bowl with his buddy Ryan Poles. We are still waiting on what Jacksonville does at GM, but for now, Cunningham was side by side with Ryan Poles, front and center during the O-line and D-line drill for the second day of Senior Bowl practices. Yesterday was a lot of light work. First and second down reps, walk-through pace, and one-on-ones. Today was more situational work, a lot of third down and red zone drills, and of course, even more one-on-one drills. Our general manager has a strong presence at the Senior Bowl every year. Another reason I was really happy about the Lions losing is because not only did it allow us to hire Ben Johnson early, but I think it really allows polls in the front office to turn their attention towards the NFL draft and of course free agency, which is coming in just 6 weeks. Now let's talk about the players that stood out today. First, Mike Green was incredible today. We already knew about his burst and explosion off the line of scrimmage, but he showcased his bend in day one, and today he showcased his well-rounded skill set that included some incredible power, absolutely bulldozing through a few offensive tackles and one-on-one drills. Another guy who had an insane rep was Boston College's pass rusher, Izaraku. He did an insane cross-chop move on Oregon's first-round tackle prospect, Josh Connerly, who didn't even touch him on the rep. Another guy who caught my eye was South Carolina edge rusher Kyle Kennard. He had a huge day and is another pass rusher that could be in contention for a day two pick. There was even another defensive tackle that impressed me today. Aeneas Peebles was really disruptive. He's just another interior defensive lineman to keep an eye on. His grandpa played in the NFL. Peebles is undersized but extremely powerful and a pass rush specialist. The most impressive player in Mobile continues to be Walter Nolan, a guy who's a lock to go in the first round, but he did leave practice early today, something to monitor going forward. And then Kentucky's Deion Walker continues to be a favorite of mine. He is an imposing presence, and he's having a huge week so far. But let's move on to the offense, where Gray Zabel has been incredible. This guy seems like a perfect fit for the Chicago Bears. He played at North Dakota State. I mistakenly said NC State last night in my video, but he's a small school guy who has really stood out after two practices. He played all over the offensive line, including tackle, but at the Senior Bowl, he stood out at both guard spots, and he's been potentially the best center at the event. Zabel's in contention for the biggest standout of the day. He had a huge day in one-on-one drills, winning almost every single rep. This is a guy who could definitely help the Chicago Bears D-line on day two of the NFL draft. Heard a recent scout call this guy a plug-and-play starter at guard. Keep an eye on Gray Zabel, especially if you're looking for a new center. But speaking of centers, let's talk about a favorite of mine. Jonah Monheim was awesome today. He struggled a bit yesterday, but he really bounced back today and battled hard. He had an awesome practice, and after winning multiple reps against the defensive line, he was called out by defensive tackle Aeneas Peebles for a one-on-one. And with both teams and almost every general manager in the league watching them closely, they went at it and Monheim dominated the rep, showcasing his power and technique. It was a huge day from Caleb Williams' former teammate, the center from USC. Monheim is a guy to keep an eye on. Right now, he's probably a late day two pick, but his stock could rise. Currently, there just aren't that many guys at the Senior Bowl who will be in play to go in the top 10 of the draft this year. There are maybe 3 to 5 guys participating that could go in the first round, but really only 1 or 2 that I think could rise to the top 10. Walter Nolan is easily the best player there. And then the other two I think could definitely go in the first round are defensive tackle Shamar Stewart and Minnesota's offensive tackle Ariante Ursary. There was also supposed to be an offensive tackle from Missouri, Armand Mimbu, but he has missed the first 2 days of practice. Reports say he's been sick. No word if he'll practice tomorrow or not. But these are the guys I've identified early on as the guys Ryan Poles is most likely targeting on day two of the NFL draft. Walter Nolan is most likely not falling to day two, but he's a guy to definitely keep an eye on. Right now, Ariante Ursary, Gray Zabel, Walter Nolan, Dion Walker, and Shamar Stewart are probably my top five favorites. And that's using the same process I have in the last 2 years to identify such players as Darnell Wright, Jervon Dexter, Rome Odunze, Karan Amagaji, Torrey Taylor, and more well before the actual NFL draft. After the first 10 to 15 players in the draft, it really becomes speculative and depends on each team's draft board where these guys are ranked. Right now, the Senior Bowl features a wealth of players that should go somewhere in the range of the second and fourth round, as well as a bunch of day three guys as well. But every year, some of these guys also rise to first round consideration. When it comes to the Chicago Bears, though, these are the guys I'm watching most closely. But for the Bears, the focus is strictly in the trenches. But to me, I do think there's a bit more talent on the defensive line than there is the O line. And there's a lot of guys we could target on day two of the draft. That was probably my least favorite thing about last year's draft, not having a second round pick. That's simply where you find the most value in the NFL draft, if you ask me. There's a lot of guys with first round talent that fall to early in the second round. For the Bears, though, the focus is strictly in the trenches. I think our priorities in both free agency and the draft have to go towards overhauling both our offensive and defensive lines. If we can put a ton of resources into both, this team will be a lot better in 2025. I'm very excited that both Ryan Poles and Ian Cunningham are scouting the trenches firsthand at the Senior Bowl. Tomorrow is the final practice of the week, followed by the game on Saturday. I'll have multiple videos breaking down the rest of the week. Let me know if there's a prospect you guys want me to keep an eye on. I'm actually heading back into the film room to watch more Senior Bowl practice tape. Stay tuned for more Bears coverage. Remember to hit that like button for me. And until next time, bear down.